Hello guys, welcome back to Go Discs. We're continuing on with the New Who ranking, of course, and today we're at the specials now. So basically both specials from 2009 and 2013, so I'll combine them to both really, so there we go. So obviously the 2009 specials, of course, are the last one for David Tennant's Doctor, his last of his tenure, Russell T Davies' tenure as well, along with Phil Collinson and Julia Garner as well. And to be replaced by Stephen Moffat, Piers Wagner, and who else was the other one? Caroline Skinner? No, I think she came later. I don't really know. I'm just trying to think actually. Not too sure really. But these are the last time you'll see David on the screen, of course, during his tenure. So let's go through them. So first of all goes The Next Doctor, Christmas special of 2008, just after series 4. Cybermen in Victorian London is an interesting idea because like some mistaken identity, like a man believes himself to be the Doctor because he finds his info stamps. Of course, a guy called Jackson Lake, played by David Morrissey. And at this time, of course, we didn't know who the 11th Doctor was, who was going to replace, take over from David Tennant's role, really. And obviously, they sort of led to believe that, David Morris might be interested in, a bit of a handover. Like, Tennant will leave and Morrissey will take over the role. Actually, I think that was sort of people's perception when they first saw this. It wasn't until early in 2009 when Matt Smith was announced. So it was like, again, totally different thing out of the blue, really. So yeah. Simon trying, using slave labour and everything else, trying to create the Cyber King with a woman called Miss Hartigan, Cyber Shades, and everything else is running amok, really. Again, it's like workhouse involving children and everything else. So, Industrial Revolution type stuff, really. But I think to a point, it all gets over ridiculous, really. I mean, the ideas with Jackson Lake, mistaken identity, think he's the Doctor. That's an interesting thing, actually. Also, just to point out, the whole end bit of the Cyber King, of course, is somewhat similar to with the N-Form and Eva Jericho in Damaged Goods, just so you know. So a bit of that Damaged Goods novel by Russell T Davies has entered in New Who. So he's sort of had bits in really, but I think it's an interesting one, a strange one to really put in really, because, but there we go. This is one of those things really, but it's an average Christmas special. I don't think people think of it highly really, but there we go. I mean, Christmas specials, it's a bit of fluff really, and also you just think, it's a bit of fun. You look at, if you rewatched them and looking back on them, you think they're a bit cheesy really, but there are some good ones actually, that all are interesting. So there we go. So then we've got Planet of the Dead is next, co-written by Gareth Roberts, of course. Not much there about him really. Although, originally, this idea was meant to be another novel adaptation based on The Highest Science, apparently. But some ideas were used, of course, like the idea of like normal people in transport end up being taken to an alien planet. In the case of The Highest Science, it was a train carriage full of passengers, and they ended up on Sakrat. They did, and for this one, of course, there's a double-decker bus and on San Helios, I think it's known as. No Chelonians. They were originally meant to be in Planet of the Dead, which would have been interesting. Obviously, they couldn't, so they ended up getting Tritovols and those swarm things, of course. Stingray with teeth in, I think. But I don't mind it actually. It's like a barren thing, of course. They've ended up on a desert planet. They're going to be eaten alive at some point. They go through, try and escape through this wormhole, which somehow randomly appears, of course. I do like the scene, of course, when the bus driver goes through, thinking, oh, we can go home, actually, we're free. And obviously, he goes through and ends up becoming like a skeleton and ends up in the middle of a motorbike. That's actually pretty interesting. I would say that, what was I thinking else? Also Daniel Kaluuya is in this as well, in one of his early roles. So he's in that, and also brings on the Four Knocks thing, of course. The Four Knocks story arc towards the end of Tennant's run, of course, leading to the return of the Master, of course. He will knock 4 times, of course. Now, next up we got is The Waters of Mars. Based on a siege story, it's regarded as one of the best stories ever, of course, in terms of Tennant's run, because of how creepy and scary it is. You got an interesting idea with the flood, like some fluid parasite infecting everyone else, spurting water all over the place, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's just it's an interesting concept, of course. Also, it sort of relates to the Ice Warriors as well. Indeed. it's just a very good story. It is. I think what lets it down, really, in my opinion, is the whole thing with the Doctor becoming the whole Time Lord Victorious thing. Like, he bends the rules, and it feels like it's a weird out character thing. It also just comes out of nowhere. Considering it's very much to the end of his run. It's like it just comes out of nowhere. Like, oh, I can do what I want now. Actually, I can save these people, of course. Even though it's like a yin yang thing. Like, it's a double-edged sword. One side is like, it's basically like it's so like a strange move for his character. Makes him more arrogant and everything. But also on the other hand, you've got like a really good scene, of course, with Adelaide Brooke, who's basically a substitute companion in this story, really played by Lindsay Duncan, and obviously decides I should have died on that base, but it's like I bend time and I win and everything else, so suck it, and obviously she ends up taking can I shoot herself and I went home at the end. So that's a really good moment there, and he realizes he's done wrong on his face, and obviously you see the Ood Sigma pair up at the end. Really, it's like it's getting close to time, nearly time, of course. So yeah, it's good. It's a very good story that is. I could probably mention Dreamland as well. Actually, that animated stuff, 3D animated animation as well. It's been all right, really. To be honest, it's basically Doctor ends up in Area 51, really. So it's interesting. It's also got George Moffat as well. Well, George Tennant now, his wife in. A few bits and pieces, of course. It's very sort of Borderlands free, like from the Xbox 360 era of gaming, really. It's like you think, it's like very Borderlands-esque, that sort of thing. Very sort of cartoony sort of thing. That could be interesting, really. Well, it's a all right story, really. I think people forget about Dreamland, really. And we finish off with The End of Time, Part 1 and 2. I would say not the best story to go on Tennant's run, I have to say. It's quite overblown. The Master returns. He creates himself the Master Race. The Time Lords return. Brilliantly played by, Rassilon played by Timothy Dalton. Fantastic, even though it doesn't do much, really. They're sort of there and they end up going back. It's a bit of a waste of potential with the Time Lords, of course. They should, they should have done much more better. It builds up to be a mass story, but in the end it sort of becomes like a Time Lord story as well. Like, the Doctor trying to bash his own people or take them back to the gates of hell, really. That sort of thing. And the whole thing, of course, the prolonged regeneration of the length of it, of course, Senior Spencer and everything else. It's like, really, do we need that? Of course, even though it's found at Russell's tenure, it just feels a bit, overblown and everything else. It's quite overblown and everything else. It's like too much. And the Master, not really the Master, really. He's basically, he's like some Marvel character, like some energy thing, of course, like some weird superhero thing. Strange. Even though it's when we died, it should be like a decayed husk, like it was in Deadly Assassin or Keeper of Traken, like that. Just be a hermit, like a dishevelled, decayed hermit. That'd be better, I would say. And also, it ends up getting at least a life afterwards, not like some glowy skeleton thing. Like, when he laughs a lot and everything else and eats people. Really, she's lying there with his hands. Nah. And the whole regeneration thing, of course, like the line, I don't want to go. Nah. It's not, that is just not good, Even though he saw foreshadows, like, that's been mentioned a few times, like he's going to die, and it feels doesn't want, like, it's the words of, like, the 10th Doctor and everything else saying that. It doesn't really work in that character, especially in the story itself, in his last story. It feels like he's brainwashing the public. Yes, it feels like that, like brainwashing, the people who, when Doctor Who was big, massive and everything else, and I think that sort of tainted everything else when Matt Smith came along, really. I mean, gradually people still stuck around for it, but I think most people sort of skipped off and think, yeah, not really, it's like that, really. So yeah, it's not a good end, really, that sort of thing, but there we go. The one thing I do like about it is Bernard Cribbins. As is, he's as the last companion of the 10th Doctor. I think he's good. I mean, Cribbins is good anyway, so it's no fault on there. But there we go. Also, don't know why she's in it. Why is she in it? I don't know. It's just some weird thing, really. Now let's go to the 2013 specials. So the two specials after Series 7, between Series 7 and Series 8, we got The Day of the Doctor, which is the more Doctor story. In fairness, it's all right. I'm not really keen on it as much. Obviously, I'm banged on about I'm not really a fan of the Matt Smith era anyway. I think the problem is with this whole thing, it's more a celebration of New Who than ever, rather than 50 years. You know, in terms of 50 years, they could have done so much better. But obviously, I think it was like limitations and stuff. They could do sorts really, but obviously, what they're giving it's more to do with New Who really. To be honest, I feel like they should have done. Well, I don't know what they're going to go with it really, but you know, they should have potential really. You know, they should have done a lot more really when you look back on it. It's nice to see John Hurt, even though he's not really a fleshed out Doctor. I would say, like, even though I think he's fleshed out in Big Finish and Engines of War as well, that novel. There we go. He's a good actor, John Hurt, Sir John Hurt, late John Hurt. But his Doctor, I really don't know. It's like a weird thing. Like he so comes out of the blue, really. You know, obviously I think it's going to be Elson to come back, but he declined. Obviously now he's returned back actually just very recently. So, but I just don't know really. It's just a strange thing really going on. There we go. Well, you got the return of Zygons, Daleks. You know, it's a bit of that sort of thing really. It feels a bit jumbled up really. After admit, it's a bit jumbled up. I would say, but I just don't know. It's a bit middling, a bit average, really. I would say. There we go. That's my opinions on the Day of the Doctor. That's the Doctor. That's pretty good anyway. It's only 6 minutes long, but it's got Paul McGann in it, so fair enough. It's its points, of course. You know. Also, regeneration as well. So we finally get the end. So we get the beginning. It's 10 years, end. It's 10 years. You can also fill it in the blanks, of course. The comics be finished, EDAs, whatever, and that's all. Where depends. You know, canon depends what you think canon is now. Who knows? And then we finish off with Time of the Doctor. Not a good Christmas special. It's all over the place, rambly, just everywhere. It throws the kitchen sink a lot, and yeah, it just doesn't. You know, the only thing that's all of the best thing about it is the regeneration scene from Smith to Capaldi, because it's different, of course. Rather than be like bombastic and everything else, like it just happens in a flash. It just happens very quickly. It's like, oh really? Oh my god, really? But everything else building up to it was just like, nah. You know, I remember watching it. Really, you know, I think you sort of feel like that Christmas, but I think the story itself, it just feels a bit meandering, really. You know, also it's built up to his battle on Trenzalore and everything else in a town called Christmas. It's just, it doesn't feel, the same really. It just feels a bit different, really. But there we go. So that's it, guys. I've been talking about the specials from 2008, 2013 as well. So it's quite a number of them. What are your thoughts on them, of course? Do you think they're okay? Do you think they're a bit average? Do you think they're not terrible? See what you think. See you later, guys.